And
what
yes.
happened? And what happened with that?
So what I realized was that we were all working on our own stuff, which I knew I was working on my stuff too, and I knew they had a lot to do with mother issues. And
because, well, let's step back here for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a woman and you own a business, you are the mother.
Mm-hmm.
That is it. Even if you don't want to be the mother, everybody's going to see you as the authority, grown-up woman. So that probably brought up a lot of issues for you, as it always does, as a woman leader. And then, of course, you don't see people showing up in the way that maybe you want to, because many people have issues with their mothers, unresolved.
Right.
Unresolved issues.
And I wanted that originally, unconsciously.
Right.
I didn't realize that because my own family life had been so fractured, and I knew that I had been trying to create it in my personal life, having relationships, doing that, and I knew it was bleeding over to my professional life, but I had no idea to the depth of dependency I had created until what I affectionately call in October corrected the Titanic.
Because were you heading for the big iceberg? You know,
I wasn't heading. I stuttered on the side of it, but I didn't compromise the hull.
So how did you do that? What did that look like? You know, how did you realize, oh, okay, I really need to change my leadership style here?
It wasn't a choice. I was exhausted.
Okay, you exhausted yourself.
Yeah, because the big kicker was, and I think for Leos, that unless we have the whole rug pulled out from underneath us, we can manage it. We can handle it.
Yeah.
So both my personal life and my professional life rug came completely out for me. I was exhausted. I had just gotten out of a really fairly dysfunctional relationship that put a lot in my face that I was like, oh yeah. And at the same time it was happening, but in a smaller degree at the shop. But had they not happened in combination together, I would not have recognized it to the degree that I did, and I was exhausted. And I couldn't do it anymore. And I had people coming at me, wanting things from me, just like my teenager wanted from me, and I couldn't even give it to my teenager.
Like attention, or what do you mean?
Attention. It's almost unconscious too, and it's just that requirement of holding space, which again, I'm really good at. So I thought it's what I needed to do to really anchor the space when I first started Urban Pearl. And yes, I think when you start a business you should do it, but you should be able to back out of it as the main character. So
holding space, you mean holding the vision, or just what do you mean
people,
by that? Mm-hmm.
And that support comes through sensing, like the minute they walk in through the door. Just like as if you walk into your mother's house, most mothers, or functional mothers,
or the mothers we always wished we had, right?
From the 50s, let's just go there.
If your mother were Donna Reed and you came home, she'd say, honey, hi, come on in.
Exactly, Little House on the Prairie, whatever it is. There'd be an apple pie in the oven, and the beds would be made, and you'd get swept into your spot.
Right.
And that's how I started every day, and it's how I train my front desk, is I want them to walk in as if this is exactly where they want to be every day. And what I was realizing is even when I do that, the kids would still come into the house, throw their shoes across the room, stomp across,
right.
Not talk to you, and I was like, oh,
they're not
the energy that I'm putting.
They're not on the same TV show as I am.
Right.
Why are they not on this show with me?
Right.
Right.
And so I learned. So I was getting more exhausted because what I was doing was taking care of a situation that wasn't mine to take care of.
Right.
So it was presenting itself that way, and I was getting exhausted, and quite dramatically it all hit me at the same time. And in maybe typical Leo fashion, but I know for sure my fashion is that I'm just like, cut it off.
Done.
And even though when I say it that abruptly, it's a very internal process. I mean, there was a lot of crying, there was a lot of stress and processing, and
as you were letting go of this dream,
of how what I thought it was.
So just to clarify, you did not close the business. The business continues. Many people left the shop.
Total guidance by you, because honestly,
we did work together on this, having been through that.
I would have walked. I probably just would have shut the door.
And we're like, okay, do not throw out the baby with the bathwater. You did a lot of work there to create that. So what happened was, tell us, you had a conversation with your staff. You had the big meeting. And what happened at that meeting?
Yeah, so what was happening was that some self-sabotaging on my own part was occurring as far as again, dealing with my own personal development of whether or not I was due the success I was having, where I was at in my life, several things. But ultimately, all of my teenagers were starting to...
Your staff.
Yes.
Your staff.
Were totally, because they didn't see me parenting anymore, were starting to take over the parenting role. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I know like one of the things that happened was basically you told them that you basically told them that you weren't going to be taking care of them in the way that you used to, in a very concrete kind of a way.
Yeah, so right before I went into the meeting was recognizing that that I had been mothering, which I knew, but I knew I could no longer do it, and setting up the boundaries, because again, as a mom, in a professional situation, I was letting all the boundaries bleed. So I knew I had to go into that meeting, the den. I always affectionately say the day the wolves and the den met.
The wolf den.
It was. And probably one of the scariest moments I've had in a long time, even in front of investors.
Right. Yeah, because when you're dealing with your staff, it's even scarier than investors.
Well, and they were people that I had considered friends and cared about for a long time.
You were emotionally involved with them.
Totally emotionally involved with them. Right. And
so you actually cared what they thought about you.
Exactly.
Which is very dangerous.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I wish I would have known that earlier. So, yeah, I mean, I did. I was really invested in, and I didn't, it almost related back to high school. I didn't want to be the bad guy, and I didn't want to not be liked. These were people that I cared about, and their opinion mattered to me.
Right.
And that was very dangerous, and that was my problem. And so by the end of that day, right before that meeting, I knew that what I had done was wrong, and what I was getting ready to do, a majority of them would not understand, because they weren't in that place, and nor would they ever experience, probably for the most part, the job that I have to do.
Right.
And so I went in there, and I was very matter-of-fact and dealt with several things, and shut down several other things, and then basically said, this is how it's going to be, and I respect and appreciate all of you, and I'm sorry if I've let any of you down, but it's no longer going to be operating this way, and took a new direction. And
yes. I am now getting behind the steering wheel of this giant cruise ship so that we don't crash into the iceberg.
And I admitted all that. I did that in the staff meeting, even though there was some guidance to not really go too deep into that. And I didn't go real deep into it, but I said, you know what, this is my fault. I did this. I'm the one that didn't have the boundaries set up. I'm the one that let this all go. I'm the one that am working through this, and this was my big learning lesson that happened to spill out on everybody else.
Right.
And
which some people understood, and then some people did not understand, because basically what you were saying was, I'm not going to be the mom anymore. So the people who
I didn't basically say it. I said, I am no longer your mother. I am no longer your therapist.
So the ones who still needed that, they left, correct?
Yes.
Yes, they left the shop.
Yeah.
And that opened up a whole lot of energy.
Yeah, there was a lot of follow through that occurred with that, and it was scary. And
what was scary? Which part was scary?
Well, again, even though I can say that their opinions don't matter, to feel that and to disconnect from that, is difficult, and it's scary because there's a certain portion of it, when there's an orange in a room, you pick it up and you look around to make sure there's no bad spots on it, and then you might eat it or you might put it away. And so I look at things and I analyze them. And for me to go there and to be able to do and make the decisions that I make, I feel like I have to tap into a certain part of me. But what I hadn't learned how to do was to pull back up my, not shield, but...
well, appropriate boundaries.
Right.
Just appropriate.
Compassionate disconnection to the situation.
Compassionate disconnection.
I was leaving it wide open. I'd go to that space where I would be feeling and sensing things and leave myself wide open to everything else that was coming
Because ultimately what happened was, which every entrepreneur has to come to, the business, if the business is to survive, changes often need to be made, and some people aren't going to like those changes. Yeah. But of course, they're not getting the big picture of the whole business because they're only a cog in the wheel. Which
was very easy for me to make that distinction with anybody who was just starting or just hiring or who had only been there for a few months. I could sit down and have that conversation all day long. I can have that discussion with anybody. anybody else. These people I had taken in as if they were my family. So
Right.
the big,
And that's where you get, that's
Yeah.
where we get stuck, right? Because we forgive our
and now I
family.
totally understand why businesses don't operate like family. I'm like, I get it. Never doing that again.